Hi, this is Knox from the podcast with Knox and Jamie. And maybe like us at the podcast, you also know people who have been smokers or vapors. And Zyn is the one product it seems like everyone is talking about because there are many good reasons to make a change to Zyn nicotine pouches. Reasons like Zyn nicotine pouches are still America's #1 choice for smoke-free, hands-free nicotine satisfaction. And you can choose between 10 varieties, each variety available in either 3 or 6 milligrams. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
The market's uncertain, revenue's tight, and hiring on hold. That's why results-driven companies are using Upwork to keep work moving. Go to Upwork.com today and start hiring proven freelance talent fast. No bulky overhead. No rigid long-term contracts. Just the right expert right when you need them. Work smarter and faster with Upwork. Go to Upwork.com now and find your freelance expert. That's UPWORK.com. Post a job for free and get started today.
Did you know adults 60 plus lose more than $60 billion each year to financial exploitation? Greenlight's new Family Shield plan empowers you to monitor your accounts for suspicious activity, protect yourself with up to $1 million identity theft coverage, and reassure loved ones that you're safe with location sharing and place alerts. Get peace of mind today at greenlight.com/protect. That's greenlight.com/protect.
The market's uncertain, revenue's tight, and hiring on hold. That's why results-driven companies are using Upwork to keep work moving. Go to Upwork.com today and start hiring proven freelance talent fast. No bulky overhead. No rigid long-term contracts. Just the right expert right when you need them. Work smarter and faster with Upwork. Go to Upwork.com now and find your freelance expert. That's UPWORK.com. Post a job for free and get started today.
Hi, this is Knox from the podcast with Knox and Jamie. And maybe like us at the podcast, you also know people who have been smokers or vapors. And Zyn is the one product it seems like everyone is talking about because there are many good reasons to make a change to Zyn nicotine pouches. Reasons like Zyn nicotine pouches are still America's #1 choice for smoke-free, hands-free nicotine satisfaction. And you can choose between 10 varieties, each variety available in either 3 or 6 milligrams. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Hello, I'm Sarah and welcome to the Whispering Woods podcast. This episode is all about the Malawi vampires and it is still part of our season of The Witch. I hope you've enjoyed all of these stories. I know that not all of them have been that creepy or paranormal, but I've personally found them really, really interesting and also a bit shocking. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where for £2.50 a month, you can listen ad-free. And for £4.50 a month, you can listen to this podcast and our other podcast, Obscurata, ad-free. We're also on Apple Premium, where for $4.99 you can listen to both podcasts ad-free. And you do also get the episodes in advance on both platforms. Right. Well, get straight into it. Are you ready for the story? A low wail carried through the night air in the village of Chimwaza. Stefan Sazuz stepped out of his doorway to the sight of distant fires on the hillside. The orange glow of torches bobbed closer, accompanied by shouts of Anamapoba, bloodsuckers. Before he could react, an angry mob encircled his compound. In the flickering light, neighbours and strangers accused Sazuz of harbouring vampires that crept out after midnight to prey on the living. Over the cacophony, Sazuz protested his innocence, but fear had already galvanized the crowd. Moments later, stones crashed through his windows. By dawn, his home lay in ruins, property destroyed, and family terrified. He was lucky to escape with his life. Others in Malawi would not be so fortunate. The panic began weeks earlier, in September 2017, as a strange rumour spread along the border of southern Malawi and Mozambique. Villagers spoke of unseen nocturnal creatures attacking people in their sleep and sucking their blood. In Mulanje district, a mountainous tea-growing region, a woman stumbled into a local clinic one morning, claiming that mysterious intruders had entered her house in the night and drained her blood. Word of the Krond Clinic incident spread rapidly, igniting both curiosity and terror. Local police and health officials tried to assure residents that no such bloodthirsty beings existed. The Society of Medical Doctors even issued a statement calling the vampire stories shared delusions and mass hysteria. Facts proved no match for fear. Through village gossip, text messages, and social media, the tale of the Anima Poba took on a life of its own. By mid-September, the bloodsucker scare had engulfed several districts of southern Malawi. Residents sincerely believed that modern-day vampires were prowling among them. These were not the Kate immortals of horror films, but something perhaps more frightening. Human conspirators wielding magic and technology to incapacitate victims and extract their blood. According to local law, the blood was collected using needles or other devices, not fangs, and then sold for riches or used in satanic rituals by the elite. In quiet farming villages where electricity was scarce, people noticed any unfamiliar light or chemical smell and wondered if it was the work of vampires, spraying a gas to knock their victims unconscious. Nightfall once welcomed the cool relief from the sub-Saharan heat, now brought only dread. Fear morphed into action. Determined to protect their families, villagers began organising patrols after dark. They piled rocks and logs into makeshift roadblocks on dirt lanes, stopping travellers to interrogate them for any sign of vampire involvement. Gangs of young men, armed with panga knives and homemade torches, took turns standing guard under the moonlight, eyes scanning the shadows for intruders. Women and children often slept outside in groups, huddled around bonfires for safety. Parents whispered that the Anima Poba found it easier to attack people inside closed houses during the hot, dry season, when blood circulation is very high. So long as the hot months lasted, vigilance could not ease. What began as rumour was rapidly evolving into full-blown panic. In some parts of rural Malawi, locals set up roadblocks and nighttime patrols, hoping to guard against the alleged nocturnal intruders. Fires burned by the roadsides as vigilantes kept watch, and entire families would even sleep outside their homes, fearful that inside they could be stealthily immobilized by witchcraft and drained of blood in the dark of night. Such scenes of self-defense might have seemed medieval, But in late 2017, they were an urgent reality for communities, gripped by what health experts would label a vampire hysteria. As vigilante fervour mounted, it was perhaps only a matter of time before innocent people fell victim to accusation. The first attacks were reported in the tea estates of Melange and Violo. On a Sunday in early October, an enraged crowd in Violo district descended upon the home of Orlando Chaponda, a local man who had happened to be the nephew of a former government minister. The villagers accused him of sheltering vampires in his house. They smashed his windows, tore off the iron roof sheets, and ransacked his property. By the time police intervened, Chapondo's home lay wrecked. 7 suspects were arrested for the violent invasion. The incident, shocking in itself, underscored an unsettling theme. Suspicion was often directed at those considered outsiders or elites, people thought to be colluding with dark forces to prey on the poor. Soon, scattered cases of mob justice were turning into a deadly wave. In Falun and Melange districts, strangers passing through or local figures seen as different began to be attacked. At first, at least 5 people were reported killed by mid-October, according to a United Nations security report. Lynch mobs set upon individuals accused of vampirism, beating or stoning them to death with impunity. Raids were blocked by groups demanding to inspect vehicles for evidence of bloodsuckers. The atmosphere in these normally peaceful rural areas had turned dangerously paranoid. One particularly tragic case occurred in Jalika, on the outskirts of Blantyre. There, on 19th of October, vigilantes targeted a 22-year-old man walking home from a health clinic. He suffered from epilepsy, a condition that perhaps made him seem strange to his attackers. At a road checkpoint near the airport, a mob surrounded him and, in a frenzy of suspicion, doused him in petrol and set him alight. The young man burned to death on the spot. A second victim, unidentified, was stoned to death the same day in another township of Blantyre, accused of being a bloodsucker as well. The brutality of these murders sent shockwaves through the country. Blantyre is Malawi's second largest city. The vampire panic had now moved from remote villages to a major urban centre. Eyewitness reports painted a scene of chaos and fear. They said I was keeping bloodsuckers, one accused man recounted, of the moment a mob came into his house. They could have killed me if they found me. In village after village, rumour became a licence to kill. Mobs often didn't even find any evidence of their suspicions. It was enough that someone seemed odd, or had a reputation tied to witchcraft, or even just carried unfamiliar gadgets. In one account, a traveller was lynched merely for carrying a smartphone, power bank, and water bottle while jogging, items which mobs deemed suspicious tools of sorcery. Within about 6 weeks, at least 9 people lay dead across southern Malawi, all victims of vampire hysteria. Many more had been beaten or injured. One local journalist described the affected areas as being in a state of utter chaos, with officials chased from villages and vigilantes enforcing their own nighttime curfews. To an outside observer, the notion of vampire rumours sparking deadly violence might appear baffling. But in the cultural context of rural Malawi, as in much of sub-Saharan Africa, belief in witchcraft and supernatural evil runs deep. Many communities accept that witches, known locally as Mfiti, can cause harm by magical means, and that dark occult forces can manifest in human or spirit form. The 2017 bloodsucker scare was essentially a modern twist on these age-old beliefs. Instead of witches bewitching neighbours out of personal spite, a familiar trope, the vampire figure represented an outsider who physically extracts life, blood from the community. Anthropologists note that vampires in the African context are often seen as strangers or powerful elites who steal from the community, whereas witches are usually insiders causing misfortune from within. What exactly did the Malawians imagine these vampires to be? Not the undead aristocrats of Transylvanian legend, but rather human blood thieves, possibly aided by witchcraft. According to local rumours, these bloodsuckers operated in secret syndicates or cults. They might approach a household at night and use some chemical substance or charm to put everyone into a deep sleep. Then, using needles or even invisible magic, they would draw blood from the unwitting victims, leaving them weak the next morning with unexplained dizziness or puncture marks. Often the victims never saw the attacker, which made it easy for fear to fill in the blanks. In one widely shared story, an elderly woman woke to find small wounds on her arm and convinced herself her blood had been harvested by unseen forces. Such accounts, true or not, spread like wildfire in villages, lacking other explanations. Critically, many believe these vampires did not act alone. They were thought to collaborate with certain powerful figures, whether corrupt officials, businessmen, or even foreign aid workers who would profit from the stolen blood. The blood, people said, might be sold on the black market for use in wealthy countries, or utilised in occult rituals to grant riches and success. These ideas, while fantastical, resonated in communities that saw enormous wealth disparities and inexplicable outside influences in their daily lives. Malawi is one of the poorest nations in the world, heavily dependent on foreign aid. To a struggling villager, the notion that no one gives aid for free, that perhaps the whites are giving money in exchange for blood, can sound disturbingly plausible. Coupled with the conviction that no one gives something for nothing, explained researcher Adam Ashforth, many conclude that the sale of blood might well underpin the wealth coming into the country. In other words, vampire folklore offered a way to make sense of how a few grew rich while the masses stayed poor. Someone, somewhere, must be literally draining the life from the people. Other elements of the belief drew on recent trauma and ongoing occult fears. In the 2010s, Malawi and neighbouring countries had already been grappling with ritual attacks on people with albinism, whose body parts are prized in witchcraft concoctions. Since 2014, at least 20 Malawians with albinism were murdered for such rituals, so communities were primed to think of human parts and blood as sources of supernatural power. Additionally, Any unexpected illness or misfortune, a bout of sleep paralysis, a sudden financial loss, could be attributed to magical nocturnal attacks. In one village, 4 elderly people were murdered by relatives in 2016 after being accused of using witchcraft to create lightning that killed a family member. Given this backdrop, the vampire scare did not arise in a vacuum. It tapped into a broad web of supernatural attributions for everyday suffering. Local language reflected how integrated the phenomenon was with traditional beliefs. The alleged bloodsuckers were often called Anamapopa, literally those who suck, but people also sometimes refer to them as witches or Satanists interchangeably. One curious aspect is that those accused as vampires tended to be society's marginalised or mistrusted: foreigners, health workers drawing blood samples, wealthy businessmen, aged widows living alone, or disabled individuals who behave differently. Poverty and lack of education played a role in these patterns of suspicion. As Zeus, the trader whose home was destroyed, observed, anyone who is doing well in business is assumed to be involved in Satanism or some form of the occult. Distrust and envy easily attached to individuals who stood out, especially if their success or lifestyle seemed unexplainable to their peers. Meanwhile, limited understanding of technology meant that a simple object, like a reusable water bottle or smartphone, could be misconstrued as a wizard's tool if it was unfamiliar to rural eyes. While the 2017 panic was severe, it was not the first time Malawi had been gripped by a fear of bloodsuckers. In fact, the country has a long history of vampire folklore that surfaces at times of stress. Anthropologists Anthony Tuta and Sangwani Tembo recount that as far back as 1948 to 49, during a devastating famine, stories spread of mysterious figures travelling in cars and vans at night to draw blood from villagers. At that time, hardly any locals owned cars. A motor vehicle itself was an agent of fear. So great was the alarm that some rural communities fought back by burning vehicles and imposing their own curfews, with chiefs forbidding people from moving after dark. Only after these drastic measures did the vampire scare of the 1940s subside, according to historical accounts. Folklorists note that similar myths of blood-stealing outsiders gained currency across colonial Africa in the early to mid-20th century. Under British rule, many Africans perceived the colonial authorities as exploitative vampires in metaphorical terms, and sometimes literal folklore reflected that. One striking example comes from the 1930s, northern Rhodesia, now Zambia. Local rumour held that Europeans were killing Africans to use their blood for making medicine or even candy. One legend specifically claimed blood was used to manufacture cough drops for white people. Though fantastical, such stories symbolise the very real extraction of wealth and labour that colonialism entailed. In other parts of the continent, vampire rumours took on political overtones. During Uganda's troubled history, and in DR Congo and Tanzania, sporadic tales circulated of governments or rebels allegedly trading blood for weapons or other resources. Historian Louise White, who extensively studied African vampire myths, noted that while these rumours were far-fetched, They provided a good way to talk about how far a repressive regime would go to control its own population. Malawi itself has seen repeated vampire scares in recent memory. Prior to 2017, the last major panic occurred in 2002, particularly in the southern districts, coinciding with yet another food crisis. That year, Malawi was experiencing erratic rains and a severe hunger period. As crops withered, villagers became so afraid of mysterious bloodsuckers that they abandoned their fields, too fearful to tend the maize lest they be attacked in the lonely furrows. Vigilante mobs in 2002 patrolled and meted out justice to suspected vampires. At least one person was killed and 3 injured in that episode. The national government at the time was forced to acknowledge the issue. A spate of violence linked to vampire rumours was even noted in a US State Department report, and President Bakili Malusi had to appeal for calm, much as his successors would years later. There was another flare-up around 2007 to 8, though it garnered less media attention, and in 2009, public hysteria reached such a pitch that a man named Jack Bandawi, nicknamed Nachi Panti, was arrested in Blantyre, accused of leading a blood-sucking syndicate responsible for several murders. Whether Bandawi truly committed those crimes or was a convenient scapegoat remains unclear, but his arrest temporarily satiated the public's demand for a culprit. Each of these cycles followed a familiar pattern: a time of economic hardship or social upheaval, an outbreak of bloodsucker rumours, vigilante responses, and then heavy-handed crackdowns once authorities could no longer ignore the disorder. What drives this recurring nightmare? Scholars suggest that beyond the surface belief in witchcraft, the material conditions of life in Malawi create a tinderbox for such panics. A vampire monster is, in effect, a symbolic embodiment of all that is draining the community's lifeblood, be it economic, exploitation, social change, or moral decline. By October 2017, the vampire craze in southern Malawi had drawn enough blood and global attention that the government and international agencies were forced to react decisively. The United Nations Department of Safety and Security issued a report highlighting the severity of the violence and declaring 2 districts, Balome and Mulanje, unsafe for staff, citing ongoing stories of bloodsucking and possible existence of vampires. The UN temporarily withdrew its field personnel from those areas to protect them from mob attacks. Some NGOs followed suit, pulling out aid workers and suspending programs until order could be restored. The US Embassy in Malawi, likewise, placed several southern districts on a travel blacklist and evacuated Peace Corps volunteers, while advising remaining staff to get explicit permission before any travel to the region. For communities already struggling with poverty, the sudden absence of humanitarian workers, their lifeline to clinics and food aid, was another heavy blow, ironically inflicted by their own panic. On the ground, Malawian authorities deployed over 100 riot police to the affected districts. A dusk to dawn curfew was imposed in the worst-hit communities, aiming to stop the nightly violence by keeping people off the streets after dark. Roadblocks set up by civilians were ordered dismantled, and the army was called in to reinforce local enforcement. The Commissioner of Police in the south similarly urged people to stop vigilantism, branding the vampire rumours false. But convincing a populace entrenched in superstition proved immensely difficult. Some villagers simply saw the official denials as part of the conspiracy, believing that the government or police were hiding the truth or even protecting the bloodsuckers. President Peter Mutharaki found himself walking a tightrope between affirming modern law and acknowledging traditional beliefs. In early October, he travelled to meet distraught residents in Mulanje and surrounding areas. Clad in a sober suit amid the village huts, he publicly condemned the lynch mobs for killing innocent people. Yet, in the same breath, the president made a nod to the beliefs that sparked the violence. If people are using witchcraft to suck people's blood, he declared to a gathering of local chiefs, I would deal with them and ask them to stop doing that with immediate effect. It was an extraordinary statement, essentially treating vampires as potentially real criminals who should ease their activities. To frightened villagers, this sounded like validation that their fears were not crazy. To educated urban Malawians and observers abroad, it was a frustrating reinforcement of superstition. But politically, Mutharika understood he needed to appease public sentiment. Even as he decried distressing and agonizing reports of mob justice, he had to show respect for what many rural constituents saw as everyday reality rather than mere fantasy. By November 2017, reports of new vigilante incidents had slowed. Police had arrested over 200 suspects involved in mob violence or rumour mongering. Courts fast-tracked some cases. At least 13 people were convicted on charges related to the attacks. One man received 18 months in prison with hard labour simply for accusing a police officer of being a bloodsucker, which had nearly led a mob to assault her before authorities intervened. Such punishment sent a message that vigilantism would not be tolerated. Gradually, life in the tea estates and villages returned to a semblance of normalcy. Aid workers re-entered the districts, albeit cautiously, and the nightly curfews were lifted as the rains finally arrived, quelling the seasonal paranoia. Still, the legacy of the 2017 vampire panic lingered. Trauma and mistrust remained in communities where neighbours had turned on each other. The underlying conditions, poverty, inequality, lack of education, persisted, providing the dry tinder for future conflagrations of superstition. Indeed, it did not take very long for a new scare to ignite. In early 2020, amid political turmoil and the stresses of the COVID-19 pandemic, fresh rumours of a blood-sucking cult circulated in northern Malawi. Vigilantes mobilised, and within weeks 8 people were killed in a spate of attacks, eerily reminiscent of 2017. The victims in that instance were innocent travellers, ironically from Mozambique, who were passing through a village and fell under superstition simply due to a language barrier. The government denounced the killings, blaming unnamed political agitators for manipulating age-old fears to sow chaos. Whether or not malicious actors fanned the flames, one thing is clear. Belief in witchcraft and bloodsuckers remains potent in Malawi. As long as people struggle with hardships that defy logical explanation, crop failures, illnesses, glaring social injustice, many will continue to seek answers in the supernatural. Vampire myths, in a grim way, offer an explanation for why life can seem so cruel and unrelenting. But as shown in 2017, when these beliefs boil over, the consequences can be devastating and very real. Malawi's vampire panic stands as a reminder of how thin the line can be between folklore and tragedy, between whispers in the dark and blood on the ground.
Hi, this is Knox from the Popcast with Knox and Jamie. And maybe like us at the Popcast, you also know people who have been smokers or vapors. And Zyn is the one product it seems like everyone is talking about. Because there are many good reasons to make a change to Zyn nicotine pouches. Reasons like Zyn nicotine pouches are still America's #1 choice for smoke-free, hands-free nicotine satisfaction. And you can choose between 10 varieties, each variety available in either 3 or 6 milligrams. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
The market's uncertain, revenue's tight, and hiring on hold. That's why results-driven companies are using Upwork to keep work moving. Go to Upwork.com today and start hiring proven freelance talent fast. No bulky overhead. No rigid long-term contracts. Just the right expert right when you need them. Work smarter and faster with Upwork. Go to Upwork.com now and find your freelance expert. That's UPWORK.com. Post a job for free and get started today.
The thing with this is, and I always think the same thing with these kind of stories, what were the marks? Because I know there's this mass hysteria thing, and I can get that. We can feed off each other and all go a bit wobbly. But what were the marks? And I can definitely see parallels with the light today and some of the conspiracy theories, because there is this kind of belief that the rich feed off of the poor, like the working class, of which I am a very proud member. But there is that thing, isn't there? And there's also, I won't go into too much detail, but I'm pretty sure that most of the adults will know what I'm on about with these accusations flying around about cults and Satan worship and stuff like that. There are parallels, even now, with the Western world and what's going on, to this sort of thing, which I think is interesting. Because we don't ever really change, and I go on about that all the time, but it's all cyclical. It's all cyclical. Well, that's the end of the episode, and I hope you enjoyed. We will catch you again tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
If you're a smoker or vapor ready to make a change, you really only need one good reason. But with Zyn nicotine pouches, you'll discover many good reasons. Zyn is America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Plus, Zyn offers a robust rewards program. There are lots of options when it comes to nicotine satisfaction, but there's only one Zyn. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Hey, I'm Paige DeSorbo, and I'm always thinking about underwear.
I'm Hannah Burner, and I'm also thinking about underwear, but I prefer full coverage. I like to call them my granny panties.
Actually, I never think about underwear. That's the magic of Tommy John.
Same. They're so light and so comfy, and if it's not comfortable, I'm not wearing it.
And the bras, soft, supportive, and actually breathable.
Yes, Lord knows the girls need to breathe. Also, I need my PJs to breathe and be buttery soft and stretchy enough for my dramatic tossing and turning at night. That's why I live in my Tommy John pajamas.
Plus, they're so cute because they fit perfectly.
Put yourself on to Tommy John.
Upgrade your drawer with Tommy John. Save 25% for a limited time at TommyJohn.com/comfort. See site for details.
What's it like to care for someone who's sick? To wait for answers, to hope for healing. These are the moments our nation's healthcare teams and their patients face every single day. And it's why we do what we do. We're Siemens Healthineers, and we pioneer breakthroughs in healthcare for everyone, everywhere. Across the country, from rural communities to busy cities, our medical imaging, therapy, and laboratory solutions help providers deliver care that can be smarter, faster, and more precise. With more than 17,000 employees across the United States, we're driving innovations that support healthcare teams, strengthen systems, and truly change people's lives. Because for us, it's about more than technology, more than innovation. It's a promise, built for generations. Siemens Healthineers.